Black metal lesson number 39. Today is all about knowing when to shut up. If your amp is noisy, put it on standby. But the more important message is muting and how to mute your notes effectively. With good muting, you're able to make your guitar playing sound a lot cleaner and generally just a bit more professional. It's one of those things that separates newcomers to the more advanced players. And today, I'm going to be using my JVM with my Marshall MF400 with the Dean Vengeance. This is in D standard, and what I'm going to show you are certain techniques on how to make your playing and the sound more clean. So the first thing is, if you are playing with a stack like this and the amp itself does not have a noise gate, one of the things to do is just leave it on standby when you're not playing. Otherwise you're just going to have this constant hiss in the background and it's really annoying. But when it comes to playing, here is when you use muting effectively. The first of which is going to be when you are playing power chords. Because when you're playing power chords, your fingers need to be placed on the strings properly for effective muting. So for example here, and that's a bad example of muting because you're still letting strings ring. However, this is much better. It actually sounds like more of a power chord. So how do we do this? Most of the control is going to be from your index finger. So of course you want to fret the 5th fret on the low E string, but at the same time you want to rest the finger along the other strings and you want to fret the string and just mute gently enough so that the other strings don't make noise, because you want to shut them up. And then it's just a case of adding your ring finger on the 7th fret of E to get that proper power chord sound. Now with an amp, you want those muted sounds when you're playing the power. And that way you can make your chords sound really clean. And the same principle applies when you're playing single note lead stuff. You still want to do most of the muting with your index finger, because if your melody is something like when I'm fretting the notes with my middle, ring or little finger, the index finger is still muting all the strings. And it's a similar case if I'm playing up the strings. When I'm playing the notes, I'm still muting the strings, but here's where it gets tricky. And if you're fretting, say, the 7th fret on the A string, you still want to mute the low E. And the way you do that is with the tip of your index finger gently touching the low E string. Here's an example with good muting. And here's an example with bad muting. Now the second way is completely different. And the reason why the muting is bad is because you're really meant to be playing one note, but you're making two string sound, which is two notes. So in a muting context, it's bad. But in terms of the riff where you want that low E, then of course you don't want to mute the low E because you need that low E just ringing out. And it's important to get good at muting. But if you're playing power chords and bar chords like those, it's very easy to mute the low E with your index finger. But what if you're playing dyads, for example? How do you do the muting then? Well, there's quite a few ways. One way to mute a minor dyad is with the tip of your ring finger. Because here, that low E is not sounding through properly, which is what we want. The second way is with your middle finger. You could gently rest the middle finger on the low E. And the third way is with your thumb, doing the exact same thing that your middle finger does. And it's the same principle with major dyads as well, because you can mute with the middle finger. Or you can have your hand a bit more curved around and mute with your thumb. But there's a little bit more muting that you need to do, because when you play these dyad shapes, there I've got my index finger again resting on the strings I'm not playing, so anything from G to the high E. And that's how you're going to make your playing a lot cleaner. Now, if you're playing like a kind of pedal note riff with 8th notes, again, you still want to be muting that low E string when you're fretting all of the notes on the A string. So all of these little muting techniques are part of what makes your guitar playing sound a lot cleaner and a lot more professional. The more excess noise, the more annoying you're going to sound and the more messy it's going to sound. So the best thing to do is just keep things as clean sounding as possible and really focus on precision in your playing and really focus on the muting. So there's a few tips on learning when to shut up, but it's all good advice.